my constant co-host and good friend Ray Carr. Hi, Ray.
Hey Jim, how are you?
All right. For the folks out there, we're doing just a special sort of mini cold red here today. We're going to talk about the hostage standoff last week in Bakersfield, California, and that was Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday morning at a multi-story Chase Bank building in Bakersfield, California. It started as a reported bomb threat around 1 p.m. that afternoon on Tuesday, which quickly turned into a barricaded suspect holding multiple hostages well into the evening and into the next morning hours. The local police, the Bakersfield PD, deployed massive resources, but the situation ultimately ended on Wednesday morning with an officer involved or perhaps agent involved shooting involving FBI personnel, leaving the suspect dead. Fortunately, very fortunately, that is, all remaining hostages were freed safely and unharmed. Ray, we both worked cases similar to this in the past. Let me just turn it over to you for now and kind of take us to the next point here.
I just want to touch it. As it was reported early on, Jim, it was reported as a bank robbery that went bad. And this really wasn't a bank robbery. At least that's how the media put it out, because in this building, it housed both a Chase Bank branch, which actually was not occupied when this was going on. That was on the ground floor. On the second floor, or the above floors above that, was the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. And most of the hostages that we were familiar with, or the information that we have, were reportedly school district employees and not bank customers. Investigators indicated early on that this suspect entered the building, made bomb threats, and ultimately took hostages on the upper floors. There was no public announcement made by law enforcement that money was demanded. There was no robbery note that was passed, and the suspect attempted not to access bank funds. So, uh, from a behavioral perspective, Jim, I think this is more consistent with a grievance fueled hostage event than a profit motivated bank robbery. Um, it looked like during the negotiations, which were lengthy, as we say, 15 hours, which is quite a bit of time when you actually think about it. Think about being somewhere where you can't move for 15 hours, not able to use the bathroom, not able to do so. And I've been involved as a negotiator and as a SWAT member in some of these situations. Um, but a lot of the issues that negotiations reported were focused on personal issues, and there was nothing ever mentioned about cash. So I think that investigators had understanding that the suspect was trying to accomplish something either psychologically or symbolically rather than financially. And we won't know that until the FBI puts out their final statement, Jim.
Yeah, and look, if anyone's familiar with the 1970s movie Dog Day Afternoon, that was a lot more complicated than just a bank robbery if you've watched it. And I actually, when I got to New York in the late 80s, there were some agents that actually worked that case and were out there that day when everything went down with those two bank robbers, which resulted in both of them being um, killed by FBI personnel because they were that was a bank robbery, but it went more complicated. That was so many personal issues. But yeah, even in this one that occurred in Bakersfield last week, of course, the hostage negotiation team always wants to attempt to maintain open contact and bring in other people. I don't mean physically bring them into the building, but let them talk to other people. And they reached out, I think, for this guy's attorney because and we don't
Mhm.
mention names on
Correct.
Cold Red, or at least most of the time we don't. But this hyphenated hostage taker with his last name, he um, he apparently got jammed up. I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. He was on the watch list, a sexual offense watch list. He couldn't be near kids or schools, whatever, because he was arrested and I believe convicted of sex with a under 14-year-old.
Hmm.
So he had his own issues there. He felt somehow his defense attorney kept some evidence out. He wanted to talk to him. He didn't go into the defense attorney's office. He went, like you said, in the school board office, which happened to be on top of a bank. And and then that's when all the places are all the parts are put into place with law enforcement, including the negotiators. And Ray, you've been a negotiator. When I was a profiler, we worked with the
Mhm.
Crisis Negotiation Unit, which was kind of a sister unit to ours in Quantico, and I deployed with them a number of times, including in March 2000 when this it wasn't a bank involved, but this guy tried to kidnap an ex-girlfriend. He killed 4 people on the way. On the way to doing it, she managed to escape. He wound up in some house of, I think, her mother. There was a young kid involved, and I was on the scene early on. But finally, 11 o'clock that night, one of the hostages slipped him some Ambiens into a drink, just a soda or something. He dozed off. I believe it was the Baltimore County SWAT team came in and, shall we say, neutralized him. He didn't see sunlight the next day, and that case was resolved. No one else was hurt after those 4 people. So these are complicated matters, and there's no one way or one cookie cutter or template that negotiators, behavioralists, and certainly the tactical people go through. But we do know they flew out the hostage rescue team
Mhm.
from Quantico, and they are on standby 24/7. They have their own jet. I believe it's in Virginia because they're based in Quantico, and they were out there, and I believe they took over around 1 o'clock in the morning. And Ray, do you know any more about that part?
Well, I want our audience to understand um, that when you have a hostage negotiator and tactical operations, they're not separate efforts. When you watch TV and you watch these TV shows, you have negotiators are over here and tactical people are over here, and they're doing different things. Today, and
It,
in the FBI, they
Let me
actually
interrupt you. In the old days, Ray, sometimes that is
that's
how it
correct.
happened.
That's correct. But in
Continue.
today's, like I said, in today's environment, they operate as a coordinated team. In a situation like the Bakersfield hostage crisis, negotiators and SWAT personnel worked side by side throughout the entire incident, and they shared information continuously. And that's what it's like. So let me just run you down real quick what negotiators do. They establish communication with the suspect as quickly as possible. So you understand that when you have a barricaded situation, a hostage situation, the first 45 minutes of that situation set the tone for the next several days if it lasts that long. So it's important that they work to build rapport to reduce the emotional intensity that this individual has. I mean, he came in wired with bombs, and they're trying to gather intel about this guy's background, his motives, his mental state, what his grievance, weapons, explosives. They want to get all that information because while they're getting that information, okay, they're usually helping SWAT come up with a primary solution. But SWAT provides a safety net. They establish containment. Now, what I mean by that is they don't let anybody in or anybody out. Okay. So, in other words, we don't want additional victims going in there. The tactical team, through their surveillance of their snipers and people that are inside perimeter, are actually gathering intelligence as well. They have now cameras. And when Jim and I were on the job, they didn't have drones. They do now, which is really, really important. They're looking at the floor plans, they're looking from multiple vantage points. They're getting all this information, and believe it or not, they're passing it back over to negotiators. I want you to understand, and this is critical, people do not realize that negotiation itself is a tactical tool. Every minute the suspect spends talking is a minute that the SWAT and the negotiators are able to gather intelligence and formulate contingency plans and look to do things that are going to help save lives of those barricaded situations, barricaded individuals, Jim.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal is tactical is there for if needed. They want to get everyone out alive, including the hostage taker. That is, game plan number one. But and that can shift in its goals and how the objectives and how they're reached as the situation unfolds. The bottom line, this guy was telling, I guess, police and others that he had some kind of a kill switch on his devices, that if
Mhm.
he goes down, they will explode. To the bomb techs and the hostage rescue people, they must have had some sort of access to assessing the devices he was wearing or carrying. And they said, we don't believe that's the situation. It went into the early morning hours of the next day, and someone decided, and they had to get a few command chains, I'm sure, to make this approval. But they said, I have a clear shot. I'm going to take him out. Who knows if someone slipped him Ambien and he dozed off? We may never know that, and we don't even have to know that. But it was done legally, constitutionally, under all sort of policies and protocols that the FBI and law enforcement works under. He was a dangerous person, and it was time to take him out because he could have easily hurt other people there. And that is just something that we can never allow to keep on happening. And you're right, it wasn't just about getting money for this guy. There was complicated issues going back into his past. Ray, I think we can close up saying this was basically a suicide by cop.
Jim, in a sense, it was. And, a lot of people probably want to know, why did the FBI shoot and kill this guy? And to be totally honest with you, the FBI is never publicly going to disclose the specific trigger that led them to use deadly force. But what we know is that they held 10 hostages for 15 hours. He claimed to have, as Jim said, explosives and a dead man switch. 5 of the hostages were tied up. They negotiated. The negotiators negotiated for many hours, and they were able to secure the release of 2 hostages, which was good. But the FBI ultimately conducted a rescue operation that resulted in killing of the suspect and the release of the hostages. And in that, some common triggers that could have set this off, based upon what I know, if the hostage taker is pointing a weapon at a hostage, if his movements or the intel the negotiators are providing that says he's going to detonate the explosive device, or if there's any other threats accompanied by actions that indicate that the threat is going to be carried out, or if someone's critically endangered. And I know there was a diabetic that was in as one of the hostages, and I know that time was becoming very, very crucial. So I just think I'm so proud of what our old agency was able to do, and they just do it so well. And I've been part of it when they've done it, and I've seen it since I've left, Jim. And I'm very proud of the men and women of the FBI and law enforcement in general that were able to bring this to a conclusion where the only person that was hurt was the bad guy.
Yeah, on that final note, I will. I believe the special agent in charge name was Patel.
Yes.
Which also the name of the FBI director, and I don't believe they're related, but you never know. But hats off to Director Patel and Special Agent in Charge Patel of the Bakersfield office of the FBI. So great work there. Thanks everyone for tuning in to this special briefing, and I'd like to remind you to subscribe and like and check out our coldredpodcast.com website. And by the way, our next episode of Cold Red is this Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to do something a little different, shifting from active local crime scenes to the highest level of federal intelligence. And we'll be joined by a special guest with extensive insider knowledge of unidentified anomalous phenomena, also known as UFOs, and how our government intercepts them, what they know about it, what they're telling, maybe what they're not telling. So you're not going to miss this one. So check out that episode in just about a little over 48 hours from the time we're doing this show. Everyone, again, thanks for listening to this episode of Cold Red. I'll remind you again, like and subscribe. Matt Robinson, Matt McLaughlin are our producers. Rick Schilling, our music coordinator. Ray, thank you. And everybody, see you next time on Cold Red.